Hello, and welcome to Transformation, the essence of transformation, guided by Kaolin. Today is September 3rd, and it's episode 15. There's so much going on today in politics, and definitely had to mention that and say how in awe I am of women's courage and strength and willingness to express the truth of what has happened to them. And I expected this to happen a month ago, psychically, but it's happening now, and it is going to continue to happen. And I'll be following it very carefully, and I want to wish them the absolute best possible outcomes for their incredible strength and courage. Regarding the essence of transformation, I'm very, very happy with the response to the program. I'm glad that people are learning from it and enjoying it. Some people have asked me some questions to answer in this podcast, so I may get to do that in this podcast. One of the questions was, which psychics do I like and have I listened to? And I had started watching John Edward and Crossing over years ago, decades ago. I really appreciated his work. I liked how clear he was. I liked that the name of the program was Crossing Over. And I really appreciated the way that he had discussed death and life after death, and that he had really changed the scope of experience for people so that they could start to open up those conversations themselves. And then I'd have to say that my favorite, certainly right now, is the Long Island medium, Theresa. And she's been amazing, and I really appreciated that she referred to the soul right away in her work, because that takes a tremendous amount of courage. It's also part of her calling. So, but I also really enjoyed and that she discusses transitions she also went through that weren't really pleasant. They were difficult transitions as her gift was accelerating. Excuse me. And as she came to understand that she was going to be using it. And so I really appreciate her honesty. My gift works quite differently than hers in the sense that generally people need to request it. Occasionally I'll do a spontaneous reading, but only with the person's permission. And but I do prefer it when they're coming and calling me for the reading. But every psychic is different, and the purpose each of us serve is different. Somebody asked me if I do group readings, and I do group readings. I do. And I do have a discount gift coupon so that you can gift somebody with a reading. In fact, I just got a request for that today. And I will be doing readings at the University of Massachusetts at Amherst for Halloween. And I'm looking forward to that. And I'm going to be discussing something called Astro Talk, which is astrology sun signs and how they relate to one another, your ascendant and your moon, and how they impact you. My phone number is 413-282-8538. The website is www.spiritually-speaking.org, and the dash is especially important between spiritually speaking, as there are quite a few sites that are called spiritually speaking. Somebody had asked me, do I believe that there are angels? And I do. Occasionally I've seen them. Usually they are around let's see, around 11 or 12 feet tall when I have seen them. And they have a transparency to them. I wouldn't expect to touch one. However, there is an energy around them that protects them, an energy field around them in your dreams or if they appear to you. There's also some kind of a barrier between you and them, so you can't actually touch and penetrate that transparent energy. When I have seen them, they had a very specific message. At one point, I was going to leave one state for another, and I got my bags together, and there was one standing right at the top of the door, the foot of the door where I was going to go through, and she did not want me to go through. Excuse me. That was quite interesting that day. And I got up and I picked up my bags 2 or 3 times to pass, and I could not pass. I think with angelic realms and celestial realms, you can tell that it's a higher octave energy, I call it. Higher octave meaning celestial, safe, and also sort of in your best interests, with more of a knowledge, a paranormal, supernatural knowledge than you may have at that moment. But one of them had actually done that. And so I put my bags down and I thought maybe I should really just stay here. And as I did, within days, my life changed incredibly. And it was absolutely a wonderful series of changes that took place. So I appreciated that kind of involvement. And also, I was growing a lot as a psychic at the time. So I think that in that situation, that being was very, very interested in my continuing to grow exactly where I was. I do find that with psychic gifts, you can sometimes feel like you need to make a certain change at a certain point in the development of it. And that may be true, but sometimes it's better to sit out a cycle and just let it take care of itself before you're going to understand the outcome or appreciate how much you've grown or how much you've learned. And in that situation, that's what I had to do. Another time, I was living in a house and we were going to be selling the house. And it was a chaotic time and disappointing. It was quite a confusing time of change. And an angel appeared in the kitchen, I think when I was quite discouraged. And an angel actually appeared in the kitchen. And it was stunning. The angel did not project any light. It was not a light being. It was clearly angelic. And again, about 11 or 12 feet tall. But that was also part of me understanding that there can be language and communication without saying anything, because this angel transmitted a certain energy and a certain patience and caring about the overall situation. And it impacted me. And the situation resolved itself within 24 hours. So that was a wonderful experience. And you may have had them, of course, yourself. And if you had, you could always write that in the comments section in the podcast. I'd love to hear what your situation is like or what you may have experienced. And even what you may hope to experience. Quite a few people I speak to are experiencing light. They're seeing flashes of light. The light can be different colors, which is giving you a different message. And interestingly, there are books out about that, but I feel like the light has a certain message to you. Green might represent fertility to you, or it may represent money, but there are a variety of things that it can represent to you. So I tend to stay away from broad generalities about what a certain color light means to everyone. I think, again, that's a pretty individual part of the work. We all have astral bodies, and I think I explained that in the other episode. It's just a form of a body of light that is around you. When people pass away, they often travel in that astral body. They might visit you in a dream in that astral body. Or you may even be awake and think you're seeing things and see someone who's passed that you know who is in that astral body. My photographs are of people who are in their astral bodies very often. So if you go to the website, you'll see those particular photos. And in episode 1, they're also in episode 1 of The Essence of Transformation. One thing that I'm learning now with a lot of people that I know and readings I've done is there is that astral body being very, very activated right now. I think it is definitely connected toward the degree of oppression that one can experience in the culture. And Lord knows there's been a terrifying accent on oppression for quite a while now. So sometimes our spirit body is going to try to find ways in which we can assimilate without being destroyed or self-destructive. So you may find that you're a little confused maybe about spirituality, how real it is, what realm is it really in, how does it impact you, how much has it impacted you already in your life or in someone's life that you know. And when that happens, you might question the reality that you're actually in. And you may feel you're being overly analytical, overly critical, maybe overly optimistic, when in fact it is simply that astral realm which a part of you is actually traveling in, because we're always traveling. And that multidimensional aspect of that realm is definitely influencing you and communicating with you and maybe wanting more attention from you. I am finding now, too, that with reincarnation, which I happen to believe in, that a lot of people are experiencing a release from a certain level of pain and suffering they underwent for years. Some of the pain and suffering has had to do with Pluto and where Pluto is in your astrology natal horoscope. Pluto is the underworld, and it is often the planet which forces us to transform. So no matter where it is in your house placement, let's say in your chart, which has 12 houses, it may be impacting your education. It could be impacting your family of origin. It could be impacting where you're living. There are many things that Pluto impacts in the processes of our development. It also can be the planet that withholds secrets. So if things happen to you, no matter how old you are, whether you're a little person, little girl or boy, or an adolescent, or 35 years old or 60, if something really terrifying and traumatic happens to you, you may try to suppress it and hide, and you're hiding under the trauma, but the trauma is impacting you, it's impacting your decisions. But the astral body in you will be tuned into the Pluto, and if you meditate and if you have certain elements of belief about growing through it and coming out of those degrees of suffering, then oftentimes you can. It doesn't mean you still don't have a history of suffering. It doesn't take that away. But your coping skills develop along with Plutonian aspects and other aspects in your horoscope. and they can strengthen you and help you confront and help you deal. And dealing with trauma is what it's all about. Not at the exclusion of happiness, not to say there is not happiness or wonderful cycles in our lives that we're very, very happy about and appreciate, but it is to say that many things come to an end and we go through many changes. And so with Pluto kind of comes in very seriously from the bottom up and brings to the surface what you've been trying to hide, what you may have been ashamed of, or what you also may fear. And as it comes up to the surface, you gain more knowledge of self, and then the healing agents start to begin. Because many times it's being conscious of what's taken place that helps you start to release some of the trauma of the experience. Now, on a different wavelength, if we're multidimensional beings, and we are, and we're impacted by other multidimensional beings and energies and frequencies and vibrations, even with one another, then you may find yourself releasing certain degrees of suffering that don't even feel like they're related to this lifetime, when you feel like it's just too deep what you've been going through. The suffering is too much, and you almost have a sense that I'm not sure that this is connected to this present life, this experience that I'm in right now. And you may be right. Because with reincarnation, there could have been another incarnation where some of the residue of pain or trauma from that incarnation is still within you and bothering you and came in with you at this life. That gets a little complicated, but basically I'm just saying that part of what's happening now with the evolution of the species is that there's an intersectionality between former incarnations in this one. So sometimes in this one you're purging something that seems really extreme, but it's not even from this incarnation. It's actually residue from another incarnation that's getting released through your behavior, your actions, your beliefs in this life, and the work you do on yourself in this life. As I said, that's a little complicated. But some of the questions I received this week are really fascinating. In the last few weeks, I wanted to be sure to start to open them up for conversation. If we talk about karma, which I think is a term that's used a lot, and I think it's used too often, karma always seems kind of reduced to the simplest common denominators: good karma, bad karma. Something good happens to you, you deserved it. It's karmic. Did you deserve it from this lifetime? Did you do anything in order to have this wonderful experience? Maybe, maybe not. If something terrible happens to you, or you're born into a terrible situation, is that because of your karma in this life? No. Is it because of your karma from another life? Possibly. And then again, do we know for sure? No, we don't know for sure. We're all discussing many aspects of our experience in this reality, in this dimension. And this is considered the third dimension, but there are many dimensions. So, I don't see karma as a punishing situation. I simply don't. I also don't see karma as, the ultimate reward for anything that I've done. I simply don't. That's just my own personal opinion. I think that we're here to experience as much as we possibly can. And then we take that experience with us. And with each incarnation, that is what we're doing. And that experience can amount to wisdom. And it certainly is felt very deeply. That deep feeling regarding our experience has something to do with our souls. It has to do with how our souls are resonating in the incarnation, in the lifetime that we're inhabiting right now. Part of the beauty of that, as far as I'm concerned, is you have free will. So no matter what your philosophy is, you do have free will. No matter what you're doing or how you do it, you have free will. So a lot of the decisions that you make are choices that you've made. So I see karma more as consequences for the choices made, rather than something that's involuntary or, lacking free will and lacking a certain kind of freedom. That's how I see it. So we reach these intersections in life where we develop and where we move forward or choose not to. We also do that with illnesses. We also do that with death. When you're 28 to 31, you experience your Saturn return. And sadly, a lot of young adults don't make it through that, especially in the last few years. It's kind of cyclical, but there are many suicides. And I think at 28 and 29, people don't believe that they're going to physically die, no matter what risks they may take. And when you hit 31, you usually have experienced some kind of trauma or loss that you felt you were unprepared for. So your actions could be the result of accumulative stress, definitely certain forms of depression that hadn't been diagnosed beforehand. And then you move on from that. Many of my listeners, if you think about when you were 28 to 31, it's just part of the maturation process. And my guess is you would have several memories about a traumatic breakup, having to move from one place to another when you didn't want to, a death in the family that came as a total surprise, because it's about endings. That cycle in our lives has a lot to do with endings and also beginnings, but also endings. I was wondering about somebody else who spoke to me about being psychic, and she was wondering how to kind of define it for herself. Like, what does it mean that she's psychic? And when I asked Paul about it, and I thought, let me see what he might have to say. Because sometimes being an intuitive psychic or medium is so impulsive. It's not a time and place for it necessarily. And you want to know the right way to approach it and the right way to approach it with people. I mean, I've had experiences where somebody can shake my hand and I actually see like a newsreel of their life flashing before me, and I don't know them, and I'm not really planning to know them, but for whatever reason we've shaken hands. And then so there are parts of being psychic that are kind of involuntary and spontaneous. So I think that's another aspect of being intuitive, where you kind of want to be careful about what's really appropriate for you or not, and whom you might want to share that with or not. But occasionally with my friends, I'll have very spontaneous readings with them, but I always ask them first, I always ask first. I never just pull it out and say, hey, this is it. This is what we're talking about. So I'll always ask first. Because even in conversation, many times people don't really want answers to any questions that they're even asking. They're just wanting to discuss what some of their concerns are, some of their interests, and that's really it. And I found that as a medium, that was a really interesting part of protocol for me, was what is right for me to tell the person and what isn't. And when is it right for me to, and when isn't it right for me to? And that was something that I needed to learn. It was quite a learning process, but I enjoyed it a lot. And it was very important to do that. And my brother had said, well, being a psychic is sort of like getting into a car and starting the ignition. And your body is the car. And your psychic energy is the ignition. And to some extent, you don't want to be doing that all the time. You don't want to be on all the time. This is why it's good to work as a psychic. I think it's wiser to work as a psychic if you're able to, because you have that time frame of that particular work. So you can gather your information ahead of time. You can work it out, be crystal clear. And yet there's going to be a specific time in which you're going to be addressing what you know or what you've learned or what somebody's asked you. And that's one part of the work that I happen to like a lot. There are other psychics who have meant a lot to me. One is Eileen Garrett. She was an Irish medium, and she used to see the future and the people she'd read for through her knee. And I remember when I first learned about her around 30 years ago, and I was shocked, and I was thinking, what on earth does that mean? But I really didn't understand the different dimensions coming in and through our bodies and through our minds. So now I understand it better. I'm very grateful that that's not where all the visual activity takes place for me. It doesn't in my knees. I'm very happy that it's kind of relegated to my mind and my eye, one of my eyes. And it also passed on from being in handshakes, although I still get that occasionally. Then there's another woman who did work on reincarnation. I believe she was a therapist, Dolores Cannon. And what she learned through therapy, I think she was a hypnotherapist. And then her clients were just constantly talking about other incarnations. And even being other beings from other planets who are just on this planet for a particular purpose and length of time, almost like an experiment. This is not new. I believe this is in movies. I'm not a moviegoer. I don't even remember the last time I watched a movie. But I do see commercials occasionally, and I do see that the artistic work in the films having to do with multidimensional beings are really fascinating. They're really amazing. But that's what she had started, was past life regressions. And you can find her on YouTube. Her work is on YouTube. She has a lot of very good clips, and they're short clips. And you can just take a little piece of what matters to you from it, and you'll have learned something that may be applying to your own gift right now and could be very helpful to you. Madame Blavatsky was a theosophist. She's also on YouTube. I think her work is very helpful. She was one serious medium. And when you look her up and you listen to her work, you'll see exactly what I mean. Another person is Edgar Cayce, who wrote Many Mansions. Many of you may be already aware of Edgar Cayce. And he used to go to sleep, and he would dream of the healings for people and what kind of natural herbal remedies they needed for particular problems. And he was just amazing. And my work is somewhat like that because I do dream of people before I see them, and I'll dream of who I'm going to read next. And sometimes I'll read the content of the reading, and then I'll get a phone call within 2 days. And as it happens, when I meet the person and I start to do the reading, it actually is the dream I had 2 days before. So it's a very creative, imaginative process. This gift is full of surprises. People have asked me, what are ETs here for? There are several of them photographed in my episode number 1. And I have many, many more. And they were here before we were. They were here before we were. There are a lot of them here in Western Massachusetts. A lot. And at least certainly nothing unpleasant. If you see one, and you'll see the photos of them in my work, they're obviously very, very intelligent. They're very conscious of human nature. To some extent, they're also convinced, some are convinced, that if we blow ourselves up with the sadomasochism of many politicians, then it's going to be affecting the entire atmosphere. So it also affects their lives and other galaxies and other planets. So in a sense, they're here to have us be more aware of them. And at least the ones that I've seen, they're not oppositional at all. And it's more like they're really on a mission to relate more and to show themselves more to us. And you may have seen them, or one. And if you haven't, you might. And if so, it would be great for you to comment in this podcast, leave a comment, and let us know what you have experienced. I know that there are other stories that are terrifying. I know that. I believe that's true of human nature as well. There are absolute stories about human beings that are absolutely terrifying. We know this. We're living through one right now. But that certainly doesn't mean that it's every human being. There are many parts and pockets of the population that are extraordinary, magnificent, amazing, healers, and so forth. So I think in every population there's a pocket that we could worry about or even be afraid of, but not to take it out of context and get panicky about it like it's everyone. That can be a habit. It's a hard habit for human beings to break, but it's one that has to be broken. A friend of mine had asked me about my childhood and friendships, and it was really such an interesting memory to go back to childhood and friendships and also spirituality. I remember being really little, and a friend of mine was angry at me. We were in the park. I used to be part of a play group called Adele's Play Group in Park Slope in Brooklyn, New York. And we would go out and we did all kinds of sports, and then had Olympics at the end of the year, and you can get trophies and medals for what you did really well. It was just fantastic. Adele Froelich is the woman who had run it. She was amazing, absolutely amazing. Anyway, this friend of mine was angry about something, and she said to me, I want to throw this rock at you. So I said, okay, well, I don't want you to throw that rock at me. But she said, why don't you take a rock and I'll take a rock and you walk on one side of the walk and I will go to the other side and then we'll turn around and throw the rocks at each other. This is kind of a weird story, but it came up this week. So I thought, okay, I don't really want to do that, but I forget the circumstances and I conceded and I said, okay. A part of me, I think, I'm talking about spirituality, and some of you may relate to this. A part of me was kind of intellectually like, okay, this is very weird. I don't want to, but she is more dominant. She was definitely a more dominant personality. And I definitely did not want to mess with her. She was also an Aquarian. I'm just remembering now she was Aquarius. And Aquarius is a fixed sign. And once they set their mind to something, that's kind of it. It's reasoning with them is not like the wisest route to try to go, as far as I'm concerned. And certainly not with her. It wasn't. So I go, okay. So I start to walk the path opposite her with a rock. And my arm actually became limp. It became almost difficult for me to feel the rock in my hand. But I remember thinking or feeling, I don't want to throw this rock at her. I don't care what this is about. I don't want to. And I was only around 7, and I wasn't very confrontational at 7. But anyway, she was walking, doing her thing with a real serious strut. She was strutting it. She was into it. So when it came time for us, she counted, I think, 1 to 5 or something, or 1 to 10. And then it was time for us to turn around. And when we turned around, I made a very, very clear decision. I said, I am not throwing this rock. Even if she hits me with it, I'm not throwing it at her. And in that split second, it was time to turn to her. And sure enough, she threw her rock at me. And it did hit the side of my head. I didn't get a concussion. Luckily, I didn't fall. It wasn't life-shattering or life-changing. But it was a childhood memory of a very definite decision I had made when I considered the intellectual implications of throwing the rock or not, when I did the physical cooperating of walking the path with the rock in my hand, which seemed absurd to me, and in retrospect, it was. And then my arm getting so weak. And in retrospect now, I feel like that was an indication of my own spirituality, saying, I don't think so. I'm not going to be having altercations. I'm not. And there are other ways to deal with things. There are other ways to deal with conflict. There are other ways to deal with anything. So that's not going to be my way. And it's not a game. And I remember trying to make it so desperately into a game, like it was a safe, fun game. That was her thing. No, this would be good. This would be fun. Meanwhile, she's angry as she could be at me. And I remember thinking, no, this will not be fun. But anyway, and then I just put the rock down and she hit me with the rock. And fortunately, I was okay. And luckily, it was not a big deal, like it could have been. But it was a lesson. Then I was done. I was done. And I remember just thinking it over. And I think there is a kind of solitude in spirituality and in spiritual decisions that we all go through at most any age, where it's really not necessarily an experience that one can share with another person. And I've seen many people have to go through extremely lonely cycles while their spirituality was developing, while their psychic gift is developing. And it's really important. And to me, that was one of the first stepping stones in my own individuation process, where I was like, no, and paid the consequences for that. Because she was like, yes, I'm doing this. And that was the end of it. And nothing like that ever happened again to me. And nothing like that ever happened to me with her. And naturally, that friendship dissolved because there was nothing left for me to relate to. For whatever reason, I was into that relationship. When she made that decision and I decided to participate, and I really didn't feel I had any other recourse, then the relationship dissolved because there was nothing left about her that I cared to relate to. I guess she had shown me who she is, what she's about, the way she solves an issue, etc. I can put all kind of adult language to it now, but at the time it was just very simple, and I was like, wow, okay. And then gradually, whatever drew me to her as a friend in the past before that had stopped. It had played itself out, and I wasn't interested. So that was one of the first childhood stories I could think of. You can also go back to your adolescence to figure out where you were at spiritually in your adolescence. For some of you, that'll be super clear, very obvious. For others, not so much. We go through a lot in adolescence. We go through a lot that we can't necessarily express. I was into athletics, singing, and the work, but also very quiet because I found that there was a lot of chaos in my family of origin. And I began to form my own beliefs about my future and what my future was going to look like. And during that process, I got quieter and quieter. And in retrospect, I'm glad I did, because I didn't make any firm decisions during those years. I was just kind of reassessing things again, observing people, studying them, and also what matters to them, what do they value and why. And then I went to college, and I wasn't really ready for college at all, and I left after 6 months. And that was another transformative cycle for me, and it may have been for you, because I decided that I wanted a different kind of education than the one that I was getting. I was running a moratorium, candlelight vigil, for Vietnam veterans. And then I happened to have a visit from a family member that weekend. And it was the most difficult family member in my family. And I cried a lot. I just cried because I was grieving. I was grieving that relationship because I knew that I was out of it. I knew that it was done for me. Those years of that person's relevance to me was over. And while I was with that person, we walked and walked. And I cried and cried. And I think that when you are a psychic, you experience endings before the actual ending. And that's what I had been doing. So this is more of a reflective show than the others were. I am going to close it now. I will be back in a couple of weeks with more stories and answer more questions from people who have been watching the show. Do be sure to write in the comments section anything about your own life that you'd like me to discuss on the air. Again, my number is 413-282-8538. I do readings for individuals, partners, group readings, and you can look at my prints on episode 1 and also at spiritually-speaking.org. I want to thank you so much for tuning in. Today seems to be, at least for me, while so much is going on in Washington, there are so many emotions to feel today. So much appreciation of women, their strength, their courage, their inspiration. I actually want to thank every woman in Washington who has to do with what's going on right now. My generation of women have been going through hell since January. Most of the people I know are therapists and healers. Many have worked for decades as therapists and political activists. With the patriarchy being dominant and other aspects of it that are so destructive, so deeply impacting our culture, we have been utterly displaced and discouraged and worried for our children and for our grandchildren. But today is a day of hope. Today is a hope for justice. And for myself, I'm going to certainly spend some time alone in deep thought, deep respect, and deep appreciation for every woman who's speaking up right now about her experiences. So I'm going to close this particular episode today and also wish for you healing and hope and wellness in your essence of transformation. Thank you.